Welcome to Mapping the College Audition. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA. That's Musical Theater College Auditions. Check us out at mtca.com. And today we've got Julio Agustin Matos from Texas Women's University. For our newer listeners, it's another one of those college deep dive episodes where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. And I think you will quickly surmise from this interview that this is obviously a newer program. They are in year one now of accepting a full class after a soft launch the past few years, and really is the definition of what we call an emerging program. I mean, there's so many different ways, of course, to categorize these schools. We break them down by most competitive, and then emerging. But really, we could give you like 15 different levels of competitiveness, though then, of course, it's going to get even more into like subjective opinion if we're going to do that, right? Right now, we use a combination of numbers and then, of course, our anecdotal experiences and knowledge of these schools, which I do think is helpful to give you a framework toward how you can build a list with competitive balance. But just to say that, like, in our nomenclature, a school being emerging, which of course this like definitionally is emerging because they're in the process of emerging as a school, is not a comment on the quality of the education at an emerging program, right? Hopefully, I think that is something you're able to determine for yourself as you're diving deeper with these schools. You know, you'll have those in-depth conversations with faculty, you'll talk to current students, you'll observe classes, all of those things. But at the stage many of you are now, as you listen to this and you're building a list, I do think it can be a helpful starting off point to kind of have a sense of where things fit in the landscape. You know, many of you may feel really confident that for you, having really well-established, very competitive programs is the most important thing to you, in which case, honestly, a school like Texas Women's might not make its way onto your list. To others, you may feel you want to veer away from the most competitive schools based on your personality, and you're really searching for that best fit, which, you know, might lead to a hidden diamond in the rough like a Texas Women's. And then, of course, everything in between in terms of different people's goals. I say all of that basically by way of saying, I recognize this episode won't be relevant to everybody, in which case, if you're one of those people, thank you for the download. If you want to skip ahead to the takeaway, I will be talking a lot about sports. I talk about Moneyball. But I do just say in general, the reason I really focus on these episodes alongside interacting with the most competitive programs is I get that consistent positive feedback from students and parents who speak about how grateful they are in discovering schools that weren't on their radar, especially at the end of their process. I'll get that feedback. You know, and for some, not on their radar might mean a school like Montclair, which is still a very competitive audition-based program, but they might just not have heard of it yet if they're newer to this process. But for some, it might be a school like this. You know, we have had students attend some of those hidden gem schools, you know, even after they get into many more competitive programs that are much more numerically competitive, and be really glad they did. We've even had students who've done that where they discovered the school in the podcast, which of course is like an extra little glow for us, right? You'll know as regular listeners that I'm a big believer in fit overriding all, and how important it is to find the right school for you and what that fit will be, which of course is why I enjoy doing this very podcast, right? But we have a few coming up for you in this series of kind of hidden gem. They're not all emerging schools, but some more hidden gem schools that'll be coming up the next few months. Alongside, of course, we'll continue our conversations with the most competitive schools as well. But I hope you'll enjoy those. And I just wanted to give a little bit of the reasoning behind having them on. Some people talk about, I want nothing but those schools, and some people talk about, I want nothing but the most competitive schools. Well, you're all going to have to take the balance that you get from this podcast, right? You can always go back through the annals of this podcast. We've got that directory coming soon to make it a bit easier. But for now, you can scroll down if you want some of those multi-act episodes with those most competitive schools that we've already had on the pod. Okay, well, speaking of some of those competitive programs, we do have our private audition weekend in December, this very weekend, alongside our junior college experience. We're so excited for that. Following that and the holidays, we're going to have more private auditions in New York City the first weekend of January, and then in the days leading up to New York, Chicago, and LA Unifieds. Check us out at mtca.com if you want more information on all of those and what we've got going on this year. This is the biggest year we've done with expanding those opportunities. You know, one of the big goals, Leo and I were talking about, the idea behind this expansion was really to help cue you all to the strategy that might involve coming a bit early and or in some cases staying late with places like New York City Unifieds to kind of expand those unified audition weekends, right? Just knowing what was already true, that those unified weekends were not only the 2 days or the 3 or 4 days or the 2 days, and we're going New York, Chicago, and LA, that they are, right? They really they start earlier in many cases, in some cases go later, right? There already were other schools they're auditioning. And so we thought we would help add to that, give you a little more bang for your buck as you plan to go, what can I accomplish on the Friday before New York City? What can I accomplish even on the Thursday before New York City? What can I accomplish on the Sunday before Chicago? All those kind of things. So I'm going to be so excited to see so many of you there, both at these private auditions, but then just at Unifieds in general, which I can't believe now that Unifieds is around the corner. It feels like just yesterday we're recording that Unifieds episode, and we'll be back with another Green Room episode, all those beautiful things. You all know I'll be there in New York, Chicago, and LA, so please do come up and say hi. Of course, if you're an MTCA student, but even if you're a non-MTCA student who's a listener, I really appreciate when you guys come up and say hi. I know, for those who don't know, if you've just heard my voice, I am a giant. I'm like 6'4", and I've been told I'm an intimidating presence in the Palmer House. But I do love hearing from listeners. So please come up, say hi. I promise. I'm usually nice. It's very rare that I'm not nice. And you won't be the person. You won't be the exception. I'll be nice to you, I promise. All right. Well, the last thing I want to do before getting to this episode, this is a longer takeaway than I expected, but this was really the reason I had the longer takeaway, was just to open up the opportunity for a mailbag episode, which we're planning to air the week of Christmas while I'm off. So I'm going to record that next week. So I'm just dropping that in. If any of you have any big mailbag questions you want to get in, please feel free to do so. I know there's a big part of the special episode I want to do as basically it's going to be a giant takeaway, which also is probably going to double with the blog this month. But I'm always happy to grab a few of those pressing mailbag questioners that our listeners have, especially the timely ones, right? So if you have timely questions about the process, please get those in. If you have questions about my personal life, my softball batting average, whatever the case may be, we'll do it. You get those in, to mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com. That's mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com, and we'll get them on the show. You're also welcome to hit us up on social media or wherever you can find us. If you let us know it's a podcast question, you can reach out to mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com, or wherever you can find us for that question, and we'll get it on the show 2 weeks from now. So that's 2 weeks from now, mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com. All right, let's get to this episode with Julio Agustin Matos from Texas Women's University. Well, we are so excited to be joined by Julio Agustin Matos. Julio is an actor, director, choreographer, I said that right, and educator. He has a BM in Performance MT from Florida State, an MFA in Directing from Pennsylvania State, and then a 2-year certificate with honors from One Voice Center for Integrative Studies. He's been on Broadway, oh my gosh, Chicago, Fosse, Bells Are Ringing, Steel Pier, Never Gonna Dance, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. That's a lot of words for Broadway shows. I'm very impressed. He's also the author of the Professional Actor's Handbook, From Casting Call to Curtain Call. Previously, he's held academic and leadership positions at the City College of New York, Western Connecticut State University, James Madison, and Elon, and is currently the artistic manager of musical theater at Texas Women's University, which is what we're here to talk about today. Texas Women's is located in Denton, Texas. They're looking for a cohort of about 12 to 16 students. We'll talk about that. And they offer a BM in MT as well as a BA in music, a BA in theater, some other cool degrees we may get into. Julio, how are you feeling today? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I'm feeling great. Thank you.
Okay, good. I gave a little brief overview bio there, but anything you kind of would want people to know about you? We'll talk about Texas Women's here, but in terms of your journey, in terms of fun facts, who you are, what should we know in terms of background before we dive into the school?
I think I should thank you for mentioning all of my flops. I've got a resume full of flops.
Well, I did have to look it up. I was like, Never Gonna Dance was a Broadway show. I've never heard of that.
It was beautiful. It was Jerry Mitchell's choreography. It was gorgeat, and I think
Yep.
it was meant to close.
Yeah.
So,
Meant to
but
burn bright, not long.
it didn't run. It didn't run long. It had some
Yeah.
great. I think it was his most beautiful choreography. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think everything that I've done has always been on the journey to education. In fact, I was a music education major before I went into musical theater, but I thought, you know
Yep.
what, I'm going to do it first so that I know what to bring to the classroom. So
Yep.
those are how that was my trajectory.
Yeah, and I mean, you were saying this a little bit in our pre-show, but can you tell me a little bit about your role at Texas Women? So, you mentioned done a lot of education in the past. Kind of what is your role currently? This is the first time I think I've read those exact words of artistic manager of musical theater. What does that mean?
It means that I am one of the luckiest human beings in the world
Hell yeah.
because It's a position. I wasn't sure what kind of position I wanted next. I've been in the academic system for about 17 years, and I was ready for a transition, but I didn't know what it looked like. And so it's a new program. It's a
Yep.
Bachelor of Music, and which is not very different, because I had a consultant look over the curriculum, and she said, Julio, this looks more like a BFA than a BM.
Totally. We talk
So
about a lot on the show. The BAs and the BMs BFA and BM can be very similar. Yeah.
yeah. And so we're trying to make sure that it's 21st century, it's forward looking. It's I'm recruiting, I'm revising the curriculum, and I'm setting the foundation so that when the students arrive in the fall of next year, they are supported in every way possible.
I see how that could be a dream job. I love the idea. I was like, if I could be for MTC, if I could be mission, vision, and not have to do all of the admin work, I would be so thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Let's talk a little bit. So, imagine, I often talk about on the pod how I'm asking questions that I kind of know the answer to sometimes with some schools more than others. This is one of these wonderful, rare interviews where I don't know Texas women. So, I'm going to be learning this fresh with our listeners as I go through some of these questions. I'd love to just first off, start off and like, what is that mission vision? What is a Texas women's student going to be? I know we should probably say off the bat that it's not just women, right? We're accepting all genders here, but in terms of what is the experience of, like, when you talk about those 12 to 16 students, what are you picturing? What makes this person a person right or not right for Texas women's in terms of the kind of students you're going to be recruiting?
Yeah, thanks for that question, because it really is. The why was the reason, again, why I went back to academia. It is a co-educational institution. We actually have, I think, the university in music, we have 25%. In musical theater, we expect to have closer to, as close to 50% as possible. Um, uh, and the if you look at the website for musical theater, it has the vision right at the top, because we want to make sure we're being very clear as to what our intention is with this. It's a
Hmm.
transformative, accessible program. So it's for me, there's two type of students who will thrive in this program. One will be the students. We just had auditions, Pittsburgh Unified,
Yep.
and we called back most of the students we called back were students who played an instrument. So it's a Bachelor of Music, which is sort of a niche degree because the foundation is in music. We want some of our students to come in already reading music, already having either sung in choirs, sung in churches, but they understand how music is made. And if they play
Yep.
an instrument, it's even better. We
Yeah.
also are looking for students, especially in the area, North Texas area, who have not had access and opportunities like a lot of other students have. This is
Yep.
the kind of program we have. Theory tutors every day at any time. A student can stop by the tutoring office and or tutoring room and get tutored in theory. So we also have tutoring in other areas. It's meant for students, for those two type of students: the musician and the student who is really passionate, has innate talent, has a drive, but may not have had the same opportunities. And I think as I'm saying this, I think I'm describing myself, because I went to Florida State and got my BM, and
Yep.
I didn't get into the music theater program the first time I auditioned, but I was the student who had all the passion and had the natural talent, but I
Yep.
didn't know what I didn't have,
Right.
and it was a good
And
thing I didn't know. Yeah,
is that I guess as I burrow down, I wanted to burrow down in two words there: the transformative and then the access. Access, you're really speaking to some extent cost, which we'll talk about cost in a bit in terms of how affordable it is. But then also you're talking about how raw a student could be. That you're saying you could be starting from basically scratch and be
yeah,
raw materials,
yeah,
which I think a lot of people would find with the more competitive musical theater programs that might not feel true. Certainly from the pre-screening and all that. That if you're going, if I have no idea what I'm doing, it can feel like how do I get my way in, even if I'm just as talented as these kids, but I haven't had this exposure yet?
yeah. And I think because I've gotten to teach at other institutions, I can make that choice to at this point in my life, because I when you're not in the right relationship,
Yeah.
and there's no wrong group of students, but the values have to match. And so this institution's values at least from what I'm seeing, match my own.
That's really beautiful. And then can you tell me more about that word transformative? So if that's that lead idea of the program, what does that mean, or how do you picture in terms of we can talk about curriculum, we can talk about the ethos of the university, but how are you transforming these students?
It's Texas Women's University, which means the foundation is different from most institutions out there. It's a different when you have the right firmament. I'm sorry if that's not the correct word, but if you have
Great word.
the right foundation in place, like for example, some of the courses that we have in at the university that our students are required to take: music and cultures, women in music, music and wellness. So there's a difference in how the administrators approach
Mm-hmm.
the education and the nurturing of the whole person.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting to me. It was at a previous institution, most of the administrators were female identifying, were women. And so I found that experience really um, invigorating for me.
Yeah.
And so, but this one is truly at the foundation. That's just one. That's just one
Yeah.
way that is transformative. That it's different.
And so it might feel like there's a little bit more, again, we're talking about just compared to other BFA programs, you might feel like there's a little bit more of this like artist as citizen mindset, as opposed to like, hey, it's just about preparing you professionally. Though, of course, you're going to do that too. But you're saying it's not just about how you come in to be an actor, but also how that actor plays a role in the world and some of
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you get to ask questions. You get to the my supervisor, Dr. Pam Youngblood, is super open, which is really unheard of in music. Music is a very traditional
Mm-hmm.
art, and so, but when I say we've got to have courses that are forward thinking, we've got to have a sound production and recording techniques class. We've got to have other things that make us stand out, that make us prepare students for tomorrow's careers, not just today's careers. And also, we've got to look at the multi hyphenate, because students have to be able to do many things now. And
Mm-hmm.
as a career coach, and you probably know this, or you definitely know this as well, like I'm coaching students in musical theater, but I'm also coaching them getting an agent for film and doing
Mm-hmm.
commercials. And I just had a job in New York, which was I'm not allowed to say, but it was in a different area of
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote performing. So
Yeah, we
there's
talk about
just
it all the time.
so much.
There's
Yeah.
not one business. There's like 15 different businesses, but really you could break it down to 100 different businesses. If you're talking about like, I do video game capture. I do what if you go, who would have thought that was what I was training for? But sure, that's something I do voiceovers, but only voiceovers for these kind of audiobooks. Yeah, okay, great. Like there's all those different businesses that are so transformative.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, so just from the broader university, other than the name Texas Women's, what should I kind of know about like, outside of the BM, what's the experience of the university? I'd love to hear about like campus life, but then also stuff like academics. Like, what am I getting outside of the BM in terms of the experience of Texas Women's?
Yeah. So one of the selling points is that we are in Denton, which is a small community town, a very safe environment. We had some students audition recently, and they identify as queer, and they said, "How safe will I be?" And we believe that they will be very safe within our community. But we are part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which is the fourth largest city in the country,
Mm-hmm.
with over 22, I think 22 or 23 different regional theaters of different, we have non-union and union theaters. There are opera companies, dance companies, symphonies. So there's so much art happening. And yet they go home to their safe space. So you can practice your craft, you can make mistakes, you can be messy. And then some of the things that we have already put in process is an internship with a professional theater in some capacity, whether on stage, backstage,
Mm-hmm.
and we have an agent showcase, because you have to be competitive. So we already have an agent showcase with both Dallas and New York agents and casting directors.
Yep, I love it. Tell me a little bit, just if I don't know, like what the campus would look like. What is that campus life experience? So, how big of a campus? How small of a campus? Like, are there other things like Greek life? Are there, what am I getting in terms of the university experience? Compared to you went to two pretty big schools with Florida State and Penn State, I think. How is it going to feel in terms of the campus experience?
I wish I had a student here to help me because I'm still learning. I know that it's a medium-sized campus. There's 16,000 students.
Hmm.
There are 275 music majors, and that includes students in music therapy, music education, performance, instrumentalists. Then we have the theater division, and they have their students. They have a Bachelor of Arts in Theater, and they have a music theater certificate. Then there's the dance, interdisciplinary. There are
Hmm.
all those areas that students will be interacting with. I know that we have a recruitment and retention person who provides opportunities for students to be part of clubs.
Hmm.
I can't say which clubs there are. I'm still learning all of that.
Sure.
It's a pretty campus. I went for another long walk the other day, and it's a beautiful campus. It's also, I think, ranked number 2 in Texas for safety, and it's ranked high for a lot of the things again that matter to me: safety and affordability.
Hmm.
So those are some things that I think will make parents feel comfortable.
Yep. I mean, a lot of parent listeners. Talk to me about the academic side of things. So, what percentage of my time am I spending doing, let's say, music, acting, dancing, anything that's in the artistic world? And what percentage of my time am I spending doing other classes? And, does that mean, do some students get a minor? Do some students even get a double major? How does that work in terms of the academics of it all?
Yeah, it's a liberal arts degree, so comparable to a lot of programs out there. We're not a conservatory, so you will be taking your math, history, et cetera, et cetera. I think there are 42 credits in those and
Hmm.
120 total, so a lot in your area.
About
Um,
75%, if I'm doing that math. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We don't have to be math issues, but 120, 40, I think it's about right. 120 out of 160. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
And then
remind
do students get any minors? Probably
Yes.
not a double major within that, but yeah.
Well, as you said, we were planning on having 12 to 16 in our incoming our full cohort next year. But the program started 2 years ago, a soft launch, and it brought in 3 students in its first year and 2 students in its second year while it was figuring out the curriculum.
Hmm.
Of the 3 sophomores that we have, one is a double major in
Oh,
pre-nursing.
great.
The other student has a minor in marketing.
Yep.
We just started accepting students for next year, and one student, I'm encouraging her to do the business entrepreneurship minor, but
Hmm.
she right now is set up as a double major in musical theater and business.
Great. So you're saying
So
it would be possible, and I guess you'll see with the years of how practical and what do people recommend it, and what does that look like in terms of people's life.
yeah, but I'm really, because I've done this before, I'm able to get people out of 4 year programs in 3 years if there's a reason for that, if it's
Hmm.
financial. Universities don't like that, but I don't think that this nursing student is going to get out in 4 years, perhaps 5 years. But
Yep.
the minors will be able to get out in 4 years.
Totally makes sense. Well, and then you mentioned so it's discovering, remodeling, something what you've done with the curriculum. Can you just talk to me about? I mean, you mentioned the idea already, though I'd love to go a little deeper into like your understanding of this BM compared to, let's say, other BMs and other BFAs. But what is the curriculum? So, what are some of the things that you've added? What are some of the things that you're taking from your programs? I just like, what do the 4 years look like? I'm sure you spent a lot of time doing curriculum the past couple of years.
Yeah, I'm still wrapping my head. I have it on paper. I don't tend to keep much in my head, but what I
You
wrote
don't have to
down
give me the whole
was
directory. You could, yeah, yeah.
what I wrote down of some of the courses that I'm excited about is the
The glasses are on. For our non-video listeners, the glasses are officially on. Julio's put the glasses on. Okay.
the course that I'm excited about is the sound production and recording techniques, because there are students who are songwriters, and that's something that's going to be helpful to them.
Yep.
The music theater entrepreneurship class, which is again a business class, because we are making sure that we are preparing students to enter the career and to train. I mean, those first 3 years out of college, any program are the make it or break it years, and so making sure that they are supported in their business. The music theater seminar, which is connected to either an apprenticeship or an internship. I mentioned the agent showcase. What else? Music
Well, what about from
theory.
like a broad perspective? Like, especially with the BM, like how much music, and let's say like how much music, meaning music theory, meaning other instruments, those kind of things, how much singing, then versus how much dance acting, sort of how is that split up in terms of the big disciplines of musical theater?
Yeah, it's crazy because my Bachelor of Music, I had 4 semesters of theory. I mean, in fact, Florida State still, their BM has 4 semesters of theory, 4 semesters of sight singing, 2 semesters of keyboard and music history, etc. We have 1 semester of theory, 1 semester of sight singing, 2 semesters of keyboard, the music theater history, not music history. So a lot of it feels like a BFA.
An
Then
MTBFA,
you
yeah.
have the fun stuff is, and we hope that students will take more theory. Again, we're going to have students who don't need to take that first semester of theory because they play an instrument. But then we have the students are all in a choir in their first year. So first and second semester, they're in some choral ensemble. They have the opportunity to be, if they don't want to do that, they can be in one of the in the orchestra pit or part of the jazz band. So they are immersed in the music world right away. Then in the second year, they start moving out into the theater building and they take their acting classes, their movement, their speech classes there, all the while taking dance throughout their 4 years in
Yep.
the
And
dance areas.
I'd love to hear, often we ask like how do dance classes work with leveling? So, if you have very advanced dancers versus very beginning dancers, though I guess I'll really broadly ask that, like, how do the classes work with leveling when you talk about somebody who might be a really advanced musician versus somebody who goes, I'm raw, I got the talents, but I don't know an A from a D. Like, what does it help me make sense of that? How does that work? Are they all in the same class together? How does that work in terms of like leveling these classes?
As for dance, leveling the
I mean,
dance.
across the board. Nor often ask that with dance, but it seems like maybe with music too.
Well, for music, they take a placement test, so they will not be in a class that everyone in the class will be on the same level. So
Yep.
that's important. For dance, the same thing. That the week before they start classes, they have a dance placement assessment. And so one of the first year students we just accepted, she came in with some dance training, so she's starting at ballet 2 instead of ballet 1. The thing I want to make very clear is the program at Texas Women's University, the dance division, is one of the 5 in the country that offers a PhD in dance. So, but their dance is very contemporary, from my understanding, ballet and contemporary. The jazz comes from the graduate students, and they offer other classes depending on what the graduate students' background is. So I would not say that our program is the right one for someone who's looking for a dance.
It's really dance and have intensive. That's not necessarily you. The way that if you're a really strong musician, you might say, hey, this is a really great fit for me. If you're going, I'm a really strong dancer, I want dance focus, this might not be my BM. What about?
But it could be if you want dance focus, because Florida State's dance is very modern based. And we used to complain, again, I talk like about myself, but when I was there, we used to complain because we weren't getting jazz, we were getting ballet and modern. But there was nothing I couldn't do when I graduated. There was nothing you can throw at me that I couldn't pick up. So that's the benefit. We have one incoming student that we're excited about whose background is modern. So we know that he will be happy here. If someone's more musical theater and jazz, I'm going to make sure to give them this information because it might not be the right program.
What about acting? How does the acting? How do the acting classes work? What's that sort of projected, at least curriculum, through the 4 years from an acting perspective?
In our curriculum, they take the acting 1 course, which is called performance 1, and then the acting 2 course, which is performance 2. And it's very similar. It's your character and then your action in the second level. And they have other levels, but those are not required for the majors. Right now, we have one student who's a sophomore who's taking the production and design course, which is in theater. So he's learning about stagecraft, because that's not something that we provide in our building. And that, again, is the benefit. It's a little bit like some of the past, like we did when I was at other institutions, which is making sure that there's space for students to find their own way. Yeah. It's not a cookie cutter that we're building.
And are those acting classes that you're taking that with BA theater majors? Is it just the BMMT? So, and also would I have music performance majors? Like, would I have all the different majors taking those acting classes together?
That's my goal right now, because we only have 5 students total. Everything is integrated. We have all of the other majors combined. As the program grows, of course, we have to make sure we're serving our students, But if anybody knows me, I'm not about a silo. It's about
Hmm.
including other people, because that's how you get to compare your craft with someone else, and you push each other.
Yep. What about, just from a perspective of like location, you mentioned specifically like North Texas. Is that where you think a lot of students are coming from? I know as a PUA, you're recruiting for people from all over the country. You might be meeting people. So how do you have a sense of like, is there ambition with recruitment in terms of where students might come from? If you only have five so far, I understand, but in this incoming class, how is that working sort of geographically with recruitment?
Well, because it's Texas. I mean, Texas does music and musical theater. The high schools. I went to a high school because part of my job is recruiting, and I went, and the work that they're doing in the high schools, at least the production values
Yep.
are crazy,
Yep.
crazy. And
We always talk
so,
about how like sports and theater mirror each other. Some Texas seems like they do sports and they do theater really well, like at both
yeah,
at a really high level. Those
yeah,
football players and those theater people
yeah.
they pump out a lot.
And choir, because I was talking
Hmm.
to my colleague, and we had one student who was auditioning who said he was first in something. I don't remember what he said, but it was information that made my colleague say, "Oh, this person is an incredible musician."
Hmm.
So in choir as well.
Hmm.
So we're looking for students in the area. We're close to Oklahoma, being in North Texas.
Yep.
Um, I'm trying to think if I
Yep.
think right now we're focusing on North Texas and Southern Oklahoma.
Hmm.
While that's one demographic that we are embracing, while also making sure to attend the Unifieds, because there are students outside in other parts of the country that are looking for us. They're
Yep.
looking
And
for us.
and some listeners across the world now are going to be hearing this. Some of whom may go, "This sounds just right for me." And part of the reason they might do that would be, let's talk about cost. It looked like our crack research team came up with some very low numbers, which we like a lot. Seems like tuition is 14,000. Is that about correct in
Is
terms of
that
what you
in
think?
state or out state? Because I'm not
Well,
sure.
that's a question for you. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't. I should
It
have
looks
brought a
like
music.
in-state might be 14,000, and then you add 12,600, so maybe it gets up to 26 for out of state, if I'm reading this correctly.
Yes, and I wanted to mention the out of state, because if you get at least $1,000 scholarship from us, you qualify for in-state tuition.
Hmm. Meaning I could be from Oklahoma or from somewhere across the country and get that 14,000. But are you saying I would get 14,000 plus 13, now it's down to 13,000 if I get $1,000? I'm saying, do those things stack on top of each other?
Yes,
If you
yes,
give me
yes, yes.
$2,000, am I bringing I'm actually bringing 26 down to 12 because I'm going to 14 and then minus two?
That sounds. I
I'm
didn't think
making you do a
about
lot
that.
of math on this podcast, Julio, to
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
Who would have thought I'm going to a musical theater podcast and I have to do a lot of math? But basically
That's
in
a
terms
great
of,
question, because then you would be an in-state tuition student, so that
yeah.
should apply and make it 13,000. I think so.
Sounds great. We'll have to verify this. Verify it with your independent, financial advisor or whatever. But in terms of, as you're doing it, of course, I know this is still early as you're working out scholarships. How would one get $1,000 scholarship? Am I getting that from artistic merit from the audition? Or I shouldn't say the word merit because that's confusing. From my artistic audition, or am I getting more academic merit scholarships? How am I getting that $1,000 that might knock down the 26 to
The
14?
university is making a big push in recruitment. I know that they have tripled the amount of scholarships that they have for transfer students.
Hmm.
Now, for first year incoming students, I know that there's especially if they apply early, if they apply to the university and right away get accepted, because we have a two-step process. It's apply to university and then submit your accepted form,
Hmm.
and then we will schedule an audition. So that first step, if you know you want to investigate it, go ahead and apply to the university. Then you can start applying for scholarships.
Hmm.
That said, if you are an out-of-state student, reach out to me, and I will all but guarantee you that $1,000 to bring the cost down. I don't know if I can legally say
I
that.
love
So
that. You said all but. You're safe because you said all but guarantee. You didn't say all guarantee. You said all but guarantee. We'll have to find what the all but is, but I love that. That's great. So meaning you
well,
think a majority of your out of state musical theater people would be paying in state tuition.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's coming from my supervisor. Again, to have this kind of support from her, from the dean, from the provost and the president, who are supporting the dean, and the dean is saying, bring the students that
Yep.
you need, and we will figure their tuition out. So
I love it. We're just having
again,
this discussion at POA, but I really do think it's a beautiful thing's happened the past couple of years where as more universities have sort of rebalanced the sort of crazy need. There were so many students who want to do it, not enough spots. I do think now, in the past couple of years, more universities are being better about realizing we have to be competitive financially. I think the information is out there of like, hey, I don't know that you want to spend $200,000 to go to. Someone asked recently of like the federal limit of what they could borrow, and I was like, please don't borrow the federal limit to go to musical theater school. That's a big loan that you're going to be taking out and repaying if you're thinking about, eventually, even someone as successful as you, Julio, who done those 6 Broadway shows, 7 Broadway shows, whatever that was. It's a lot. It's a lot of money to pay back. It's hard to make it happen in this industry.
And ethically, I went to Columbia I started my MFA at Columbia, and that was 90,000 a year. And after the first year, I felt like, I already had a career, so I knew I was going to have a career when I finished. But there were 15 other people there who I just didn't know. And I'm not saying they weren't, because it hasn't, nothing to do with just talent, but it's just unethical. It's unethical to charge that much. And so I'm excited that I'm glad to hear that a lot of universities are paying attention.
I love it. Let's talk a little bit about, just from a kind of broad perspective, and then we'll take a little break here. But what is the ambition for, sort of a 10-year goal for if you think we'll be here 10 years from now? But, in terms of what you're launching Texas Women's to be, like, I see that mission as a sentence. I just kind of love to hear, like, what are you hoping if 10 years from now you've graduated 6 classes at that point or whatever it is, you got a full cohort going at that point. What does Texas Women's, how does it look different than it will in year 1? Like, so what is the goal of, like, kind of, if you're thinking about, like, on the map of the country of, of schools, sort of what is the ambition for Texas Women's?
That's a great question. You've got to have vision, and I'm in the planting and sowing phase. I mean, the planting and spreading seeds phase right now. But
that might be reaping. Is reaping a word?
If I were to retire, this would be what I would want to do. And so that's why, again, I'm the luckiest person in the world to have this opportunity. The mission of the university is, or of the division of music, a part of it is creating the future leaders in music. And so how do we, like our guest this year, we have someone scheduled who's a content creator and a local actress who's part of the Dallas Theater Center. She's a resident company member, Christina Austin Lopez. So bringing in someone who understands how to have a career in this area. Then we're going to expand to other areas, but it has to continue to center women in areas that we do not see that. For example, the students want to do new works. Great. So let's find women who are doing new works and invite them to develop their works here. Then we can open it up. I don't know if that's legal for me to say again, but this is what I feel like that's the vision, is to make it accessible to those who don't always get those opportunities. And we still see that a lot of the shows that my students pick are always written by men. And so you got to work a little bit. You got to work a little bit harder. We also have a voice. We're hiring a new voice teacher. And so that's exciting too. So we're getting the team in place. And in 10 years, I think handing it off to someone and making sure that the foundation is rich and the students are going out and they are thriving in whatever areas they want to. If they're not working in this right now, they get to do this. So they get to have joyful lives because they're moving from one part of their career to another part of the aspect of their career.
Yep. All right. So well said. All right, let's take a quick break. And on the back end, we'll talk a little bit more. We've got a bit into it, but a bit more about the audition and admission process. So back in a flash. All right, we are back with Julio Agustin Matos, and we're talking a little bit about Texas Women's University and the audition admission process. So you gave me that brief overview of, like, first you apply to the university, then you get accepted video, and then there's potentially more information in terms of like a callback audition or that kind of thing. Let's talk a bit about, like, how would I be doing those? Or talk to me about the artistic aspects of that process. So imagining the application, I understand in terms of how that would work with the university. Is then there a pre-screen video? How does that pre-screen then turn into a callback or turn into further interaction? What does that look like in terms of your artistic admission at this point?
This year, we do not have a pre-screen. Before I came here, the system was set up for a pre-screen.
Yep.
This year, you're just filling out the information on the accepted website, and we have in-person auditions. If you're not from the area and you do not want to do, we have 5 auditions. One is the November 15th, and then we have 4 in the spring.
These will be all on-campus auditions?
On-campus
Yep.
audition.
Mm-hmm.
However, as I said, we just did the Pittsburgh auditions, and those were virtual. So those students submitted videos, and from those videos, we selected our callback prospective students, and then we did an interview. We don't
Mm-hmm.
need to hear anymore. We need to talk to them, make sure they understand who we are. We get to know who they are, make sure that
Mm-hmm.
we're the right fit for them, and get a sense of who they are, because it's really about community. I think I've described the community that we're building,
Yeah.
and we want to make sure that the students who we accept are going to thrive here. We don't want people here who are great musicians, but they're not going to succeed because of one thing or the other.
I love it. And is there, you mentioned Unifieds. Did you just mean Pittsburgh Unifieds, or are you also planning to do New York, Chicago, LA, one of the national Unifieds as well?
Oh, I'm looking into the Chicago ones. I was researching you and your website, and I didn't plan on being there, but I'm also wondering if me not being there is anti our mission. So
Yeah, I think we could talk a little bit more about that. Maybe we'll do it off mic for the sake of our sweet listeners. But happy to talk about that in terms of sort of why you would or wouldn't go if that's something that you're exploring. I think generally you will be exposed to more people if you do attend a Chicago Unifieds, if you do attend New York Unifieds. So yeah, I think it can only help. I think obviously then universities always consider stuff like yield and all those other things as we go as well. Do you have a sense of like when you looked at those videos from PUA, do you feel like you have a sense of like these kind of students I was interested in? I want to maybe split, because you mentioned the culture part of which I think is of course important in terms of the human beings they are, but just from that like artistic side of things, acting, singing, dancing, what are you seeing? Musicianship, I'll add that as a fourth discipline, given that's something you're looking for. What are you seeing in the videos, in the singing, in the acting, in the dancing? What are you seeing that makes you go, hey, I want to call this person back?
See, it's different. Some of them were really silly. They had a sense of humor. A couple of them were very serious students, and those students I was interested in to see what made them smile. The things that stood out for me were having a sense of humor. Those students who were like music nerds, those students who played, there was one student who played the flute while she was doing a hula hoop. So are they strong musicians? Are they?
Just to be clear, I think you're talking about their wild card video there.
Yeah, wow, sorry.
Okay, just people are like, is that part of an audition cut of my song? Like, probably that's the wild card video.
I so forgot. Sorry.
That's fine.
So in their audition video, I mean, I'm
You
listening.
can use the wild card video. I just wanted to be clear. That's for the listeners if they're newer to this process.
I'm looking for potential. I'm looking for a student with a healthy voice. There's one student that we are interested in who may have some. We're not sure. It sounded like there could be some vocal damage, so we're interested in that student. But we may ask if again, I have to explore the legality. But can that student be scoped, because they sing in a she's Latina. She does. Oh, we have mariachi. We have a mariachi education track here. So students who want to sing mariachi come here. But it's cultural, and so we want to make sure that the student is able to sing in that way, but also healthily. So we're looking for healthy students. We're looking for physically free students. We're looking for risk takers. We're looking for students whose parents are teachers. Also, one student, her father's a theater teacher. Her mother's a choral teacher. So we know that she knows what it's going to be like here. And we're looking at students who, I kept watching the callback list, and I was watching for these amazingly talented students who, for some reason or other, were not getting the number of callbacks that I thought they would. And so I want to make sure that those students, that we got to hear those students.
The ones who might have fallen through the cracks otherwise. That might be how you're finding that second population of going, is there a raw talent there that's not being recognized for whatever reason, that you're mining that over?
Yeah. It takes effort. I mean, you got to watch 5 videos for each student. And then
there are a lot of students. There was like 200 students. I mean, I don't final number.
422 is an official number, but I think for musical theater, it was 288 when I started watching the
Oh
videos.
my gosh,
And then I
288.
watched the ones that I was interested in. I went back and watched them over and over again.
Yep.
And then I went back and looked at some others that I felt I may have missed.
Right. And that's just one place, right? That you're talking about. Now you're also going to be seeing people from all other places. Yeah.
yeah,
A lot to look at. And what about that other half of it? As you're talking about the kind of cultural conversation, obviously some part of a callback interview would be you explaining yourselves to them, as kind of like we're doing now, right? But what are you sussing out in that interview, or as you're talking to them? Like, what are you trying to get from them to go, hey, I thought from the video you might fit well here, but kind of how does that process go from the student end in terms of that interview?
I think there's the intellectual aspect, which is, are they curious? We had one
Mm-hmm.
student, and the intellectual, not meaning like book smart, although a lot of the instrumentalists come in with like they all had 3.6s and 4 point somethings. So
Mm-hmm.
if they have a high GPA, we know they will succeed academically. Do they have a personality? Are they interested in students from other areas? Because we had several students who said, "Well, it's Texas. What am I going to be okay in Texas?"
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a great question, a great
Yep.
conversation. And then students who didn't have a high GPA, we wanted to get to know them as well and see if they were curious and what were some of their interests, because maybe they won't do so well in some of the academic courses, but it would be balanced by their passion for the other courses.
Mm-hmm.
So we think they'll be okay. If they weren't super curious, then we would be setting them up for failure.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the GPA there. Are you looking at when you see students who just apply who aren't part of a PUA situation? Are you looking at the academic application? Are you looking at their essays, letters of recommendation? Are you looking at anything else in terms of stuff that from an artistic perspective? Are you checking that out before you were to say yes, I'm going to bring you in, or is it more about, hey, I'm looking at the monologues and the songs and the wildcard video?
I'm looking at so many aspects of their application. I don't look at the recommendation until there's a question for me, but I
Mm-hmm.
do look at it before we do the offer.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I didn't look at it before, I want to make sure that I look at it
There's not an
before we
issue
make
over
the
it.
offer. But I think there's enough information because they're asked questions. The material that they present, it says something about them. I mean, there were several people singing Tonight at 8. A lot of people singing Tonight at 8 this year. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay, so because I sang Tonight at 8 when I first started, but that was I wasn't the greatest singer when I first started.
Yep.
So, but I was like, okay, why are they singing? Let me hear the other one. So I just think there's such a puzzle, and I'm curious. So
Yep.
there's a lot of investigating.
It's really tricky for, a lot of students you would have seen there who are going through this process. I think especially, depending on the guidance that they have, they're trying to fit themselves into a process of what is an older timer song, because a lot of people say pre-1970, which if that's not their sensibility, I mean, I often feel that way. I love Shakespeare. As an actor, that was my sort of passion. But like sometimes you watch a kid do a Shakespeare monologue, I'm like, someone's making you do this monologue. It just kind of feels like you're forced to do this monologue. And it's tough to sort of at 17, 18 to be picking stuff that you go, this is because I love it. And this is because this shows really who I am, versus like, I'm trying to meet the requirements that these different schools are asking of me. And yeah, wish it was easier from an 18-year-old perspective.
I love that you called it an old timer song. I don't think I'd heard that before. So that's what
Old timer. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know.
an old timer song.
That's just for me not wanting to say pre-1965, pre-1970. Different schools they say it different ways, but golden age or whatever we're saying.
And
I, Go
I
ahead.
should mention our process. We asked for two 16-bar cuts, 16 to 32 bar cuts of at least one musical theater from a musical theater
Yes.
from a musical, and then the other one could be from a musical. It could be if you sing classical, if you sing country, if you rap, whatever it is. That's going to give us information.
Yep.
So, and then a monologue, a short 90-second at the most monologue, and we don't say what kind because again, what they choose gives us information about who they are.
I love it. You mentioned the idea of, trying to find some gender balance to your class, something like 50-50. I know, you don't have to commit to that idea. Are you thinking about other things as you're filling out your class? Are you thinking about stuff like, racial balance, height balance, different skill sets? Are you thinking about, I want a certain amount of tenors and a certain amount of sopranos and a certain amount? How do you think about, and this is the first year of 12 to 16 you're putting together. How are you thinking about all the different ways those 12 to 16 are going to sort of fill the room and create the culture that you're trying to put together?
Yeah, I can't say the D word anymore, but I'm
You notice I didn't say the word. I didn't say, I
and,
consciously didn't say it.
innately I'm looking for um, people. I'm looking for representation. Again, if it's transformative, it means that a student will come and sit in the audience and they'll see themselves on stage. So what does that mean? It means making sure that there is representation.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we're not tokenizing a student and only taking one of a certain type of student. So I shouldn't have said 50-50 balance because we have students who will identify as non-binary.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, and so, but yes, I think without going into specifics, the way I'm wired, it's always making sure that there's representation, including um, uh, uh, neurodiversity,
Yep.
physical diversity. So
Yep.
yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and then how do you, obviously, this is your first time doing this, so I'm asking a question that's probably unknowable, but how do you imagine that happening with the idea of yielding students? So, are you picturing you're going to take 12 to 16 and then have a wait list? Are you picturing you're going to take a bunch and then whoever comes, comes? And that's always when you're considering those factors of like, we think we want the class to have some conscientiousness the way we put it together, but you're not going to yield likely 100% of your students in year one. If you did, that would be amazing. So what do you have a plan of sort of how that's going to work with those initial offers and then how you might put together the 12 to
It's
16?
crazy. Yes, that's the question du jour because we have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
Like at other institutions, I was really good at never going above the number. Sometimes we came in below the number, but then you make up the next year with transfer students, and there's always transfer students wanting to come.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that I don't know. I may be wrong, but I have a feeling that we may go over because it's such a different kind of experience that we're offering. So and my supervisor's okay. We can go over the 16 and still make sure we provide each student with what we need. I
Yeah.
have a feeling we're going to offer more, which is obviously you do anyway. Programs offer more. I don't know how many more, but everyone that
And
we're
then
offering is someone who we want who would thrive here.
and then how do you picture that interaction? And again, this is year one, so this is you viewing this, not year one for the program, but I mean year one of this full recruitment that we're doing here. But like, how are you picturing that? Are they emailing with you in April as they're going back and forth between the $1,000 scholarship that they're all but guaranteed, and they're trying to figure out money and they're trying to figure out these questions? That's mostly interaction with you. How do you like best to be interacted with in that way? Then, as a student is, let's say they're working between 3 or 4 options, and you're one of them.
Email, and then schedule a Zoom with the parent or a phone call, preferably a Zoom meeting. Definitely, it's a personal relationship you're establishing with these young people. So it's got to be. I mean, it's a professional relationship, but it's a the that final process. You have to be accessible to the students,
Yeah.
so they should. If a student, I mean, right now it's happening. Students are interested in coming to one of our productions. We're offering them classes. They're free this week. Can we stop by and meet with you and take a tour? So all of that. That's why it's a great thing right now. I'm not teaching because
Hmm.
I can be available for an impromptu visit or a student who wants to talk about the scholarship they received and they need more money. Great. Let me talk to my committee on November 15th and see what our pot looks like. So definitely it has to be an ongoing conversation.
I love it. And you mentioned the parents in that process and sort of how they're involved in it. I'd love to just talk about, like, as we move toward wrapping, from your experience at these different universities and now as you're doing this, interacting with parents. I don't know if you got any interaction with PUA parents this past weekend, but do you have any advice for parents in terms of, how they can best guide their child through this process? I know a lot of our parent listeners feel like this is an overwhelming process. I don't know what to do. So sort of what do you sort of think in terms of what parents should be doing in this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I've evolved. I have a different opinion at this institution. At this institution, I believe that it's okay for a parent to do their research first and then with with their young person, I don't like whatever relationship they have. It's theirs, but they should not be afraid to reach out to me as well because there are things that they need answered that the student
Hmm.
may not be focusing on,
Hmm.
and so I'm open to that as well. This
To those direct
institution
interactions with
is
parents.
is that.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I do think it is a way in which the world is changing and evolving. We certainly talk about that with our students of like the number of 17-year-olds who used to just like come into the city and like, coach with us. And now it's much more likely they come in with a parent as opposed to by themselves. They're 17, they can. And, but I think about that with so many aspects of parenthood now as a parent of a 4-year-old of just going like, oh my gosh, is she going to be able to be or am I going to be? Because right now, of course, I'm doing all the school list research, but I hope when she's 18, she'll be doing some of her own. Who knows? Who
and
knows?
and and once they matriculate, then the conversation is between them. Like, I obviously you can't discuss anything specific about a student with a parent, but at the early stage, right? Like, there's one student who came for an on-campus visit with her parents. I got to meet with their parents. She's interested in double majoring. I walked her over to the business division, and they met with the people there. Uh, I looked at how she can do both majors, a business major and music theater major. It seemed overwhelming. And I said, they have this particular minor that seems like it would really support your goals. I would
Mhm.
suggest this. This is how the plan would look for the 4 years. She met, once we gave her the offer, she met with me and with her mom. I scheduled a meeting with both of them. And her mom said very clearly she is going to double major. So that was
Mhm.
very, very, it sounds like it's a very important family decision.
Yep.
And then once she goes through it, students change their mind or they fulfill both majors. So that's
Yeah. Or
up
you
to
send that mom to me and I'll say, Mom, you need to back off. She doesn't
them.
need to double major. She doesn't have to. She can be fine. She can still do business. I run a business. I don't have a double major. You can do it without a major necessarily. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
then
a
you can do musical theater without a major too.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't
Yeah.
that the truth? Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if people want more information on Texas Women's, what's the best place? Do you like them heading to a website? Do you like social media? What's the best way for people to check out more information?
I would say first start with twu.edu. I mean, we got the initials TWU, Texas
Clue.
Women's University
Yep.
.edu, musical theater.
Yep.
It will take you to the Bachelor of Music musical theater. Make sure it doesn't take you to the certificate in music theater. That's something else.
Yep.
Great program if you want to go through theater. But that will take them to our page, and our page is very clear, I believe, in who we are, what we offer, how to get in touch with financial aid, how to get the application done, and then it has my email. Reach out to me.
Yep.
Everything is there.
I love it. Julio, thanks for the time today. It was so good to get a chat with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for letting me talk about this amazing institution.
Yes, yes, yes. What a nice interview that was. Julio is such an artistic spirit, right? Hopefully you can feel that through the camera. There's a lot of like genuine curiosity that goes beyond I think some of the salespersonship you often see in these positions. I think from Julio, you got a real openness and a willingness to not know the answers that I really appreciated, just both from his actual answers and just from his energy in general. I'm going to try to keep this takeaway on the shorter side. We'll see how we do. I often say that. We'll see. I don't always accomplish it, but we did do that longer intro. So I'm going to try to keep it a little quicker here. And I'm going to start off with just the idea of Julio mentioning that they're specifically looking for raw students. I really like that. And I think it was a smart framing for them, especially as a newer emerging program. You have heard many schools talk about this very idea of like looking for potential. And I know our regular listeners will certainly have heard my Aaron Sorkin re-quoted sprinters metaphor, right? With the idea that like if you have two runners who are running a 4:0 40-yard dash and one has terrible form and one has great form, which one would you want in your program or which one would you want to work with, right? And the answer, of course, being that the one with terrible form is who you'd want to work with because if you can teach them good form, imagine how fast they'll be, right? And then, of course, I have to always give the caveat that it's not easy to run a 4:0 40 with terrible form, right? Some people who are really raw, they might not easily be in the position to show the skill set they have to run fast yet because of what's in their way. And often in this process, they feel like they can't even get themselves to the starting line, right? But again, you understand the metaphor there of like, certainly all schools are looking for raw talent. That is the idea there. They all talk about they're looking for potential and how important that is and teachability and all those things. But especially I like, in the way that Julio is framing it, the idea of like students who slip through the cracks, think it's really intriguing to me in terms of hearing that articulated that way. And you don't always hear that, actually rarely hear that idea articulated, that we're looking specifically for the kind of student who might slip through the cracks, right? And I think the reason I'm doing for this takeaway, especially as an emerging program in a competitive landscape, you almost need some kind of angle like that if you're going to grow to compete with the more established programs. If that's your goal, which again, it's not for everybody. It sounded like from Julio that is a little bit of what he's looking for, right? Growing up, I loved reading Moneyball, which for anyone who didn't catch that book, it's this awesome book about baseball and sort of analytics in baseball. And then there's this excellent movie with Brad Pitt, which will make you cry if you're a parent. Of course, I cry at everything now. What do you expect? But it's about basically the idea that the Oakland A's are trying to figure out how to compete as a small market team with sometimes literally a quarter of the budget of some of their rivals. So I have 25% of the money or 30% of the money, depending on the of some of my big competitors I'm trying to compete with, and we're offering salaries to players, and we got to figure out how do we make this work, right? And they realized, with the benefit of some math, they realized they had to take an innovative approach and look at things from a different angle, look at things differently. And there's something to what Julio's talking about here. Whether schools verbalize it or not, if you're an emerging program, you have to figure out some kind of angle if you want to make the equivalent of the World Series. Again, if that's the ambition, and it's not the goal of every emerging program. Some of them might say, we're going to take the students that come to us. We've had student podcasts on here where you go, it sounds like they're basically saying, we'll take who comes to us and we're okay with the competitive level we're at. That's what we are, and we're okay with that, right? But if not, right, if you are that program that wants to grow and really compete on the landscape alongside some of those other big programs, you've got to find some version of your angle of how you're going to do that, right? Some people talk about, we'll make it incredibly cheap, which Julio talked about, certainly the financial angle of it, right? Sometimes they're basically giving money away, or there are other attractive things that they could offer, right? But in this case, this idea of the students who kind of are falling through the cracks, it's really interesting, right? In Moneyball, it's Kevin Youkilis, for those who really are Moneyball fans, you'll remember Kevin Youkilis is the god of walks, right? They did the math and they kind of figured out teams weren't appreciate and paying for the value of walks the way they were paying for the value of singles, even though basically from a baseball perspective, it's all the same thing, right? And then there's all these other things that they realize, hey, other teams are overvaluing things that we are going to try to appropriately value. Like, they talked about players who, looked appropriate for their positions, right? We expect a shortstop and a tall left fielder or whatever it is, right? We expect people who look like they're going to fit into the uniform. So sometimes about like body fat and stuff that actually wasn't relevant for baseball, but tended to be the kind of thing that, a scout is looking for. And they go, I want somebody who looks the part, right? So in some ways, Julio's trying to figure out what are those equivalent, right? What are the things, do we care too much about defense compared to, do we like bunting people over as opposed to hitting home runs? Whatever the math things that you talk about from sort of Moneyball, there's the musical theater equivalent of those too, right? And I don't want to go like too deep on the whole Moneyball idea of it, but I think that idea of searching for hidden gems and what talent might get passed over is a really smart and cogent way of understanding kind of where they are in the landscape, and hopefully a helpful way for schools and students to find the right fit. Because, we talk about this with interviewing all the time with our students. The same way we tell our students, the more you know yourself and you can clearly speak to what you're looking for in a program, the more you're actually opening up the possibility that the specific chemistry will be there with the right school, that you'll find that fit with the right school who also is looking for that, right? And I'll say the flip side of that is really true for the schools as well. So in here, you're hearing Julio be able to articulate, I'm looking for A and B. Do you fit into one of those categories? Right? A was sort of the more musically inclined people, maybe played an instrument, and B, that raw talent. That's potentially helpful for you as a student. Go, hey, I'm B or I'm A, and this might be a good fit for me, right? That same way that we want you to articulate yourself to the schools, it's nice to hear them articulate themselves to you. Not that they have to be the Oakland A's of Texas. I'm really, of course, putting that metaphor on them of just, it intrigued me of like what is falling through the cracks must have kind of triggered something Moneyball in my head. I'm also realizing as I say all this that I might have just quoted Moneyball twice. I don't think I did. I think the idea of that Sprinter quote is a West Wing quote, but I'm definitely double quoting Aaron Sorkin, who wrote the movie of Moneyball. And it might be a Moneyball quote. I might have done it twice. But hopefully you understand the metaphor and you enjoyed the Moneyball sort of taking you down that rabbit hole, if nothing else. The other thing I will say, I talked about this a bit in the intro, was just with the idea of emerging programs in terms of different levels of competitiveness, but also not just, emerging versus competitive versus most competitive, but in this idea of a really brand new program. And we've talked about this idea before. There's just a bit of risk always involved when something is brand new. And I feel really good saying this in the case of Julio and this episode, because Julio really does seem like somebody who is in it to win it from all calculations, right? But I would add this for any program where it's brand new, and especially if you really love a figurehead who is spearheading that innovation. What happens if that person gets a different offer? Again, this is nothing to do with Julio. And in fact, I only feel comfortable saying that in this episode, as opposed to some other episodes where I maybe could have said it, because it's not something I would directly suspect in this case, right? He describes this as his dream job. He seems like this is really going to be his dream job. But it's just something to consider anytime you're looking at a program, especially any program that's brand new, is this idea of like, if it's really about one person who's attracting you there, what happens if they do a fantastic job? If they hit it out of the park, to stick with our baseball metaphors, they do a fantastic job, they really start building an amazing program, and then they get poached, right? Again, to keep with the sports metaphors, this happens all the time in the college sports world, right? Someone does an amazing job. They build up a program growing levels and divisions way beyond where it was in a short time. And then a big Division I school comes in and offers tons of money and poaches that coach away, right? Now, I wouldn't say the tons of money thing is really common in the musical theater world. The idea that you're going to get this huge multi-million-dollar offer that's going to pull you from, one program to another. But it does certainly happen where a school with really established prestige might lose their program head for whatever reason and says, hey, you're doing great work over there in Texas. I love what you're doing. And we already had a relationship. And will you come do some of that here? I like some of this innovation. We could use a little young blood. We could use a little innovation over here, right? Or of course, we've talked about this before too, in the idea of, do you want all of your people to be active performers or not? With any active performer, that amazing next Broadway show happens, and it could pull them away in some capacity, even if not away entirely. Again, none of that is specific to this case, but I just want to say it's worth weighing that in all the factors as you're considering to look at all of your programs. What would happen if this person left? Would I still be excited about the program and the foundation that they left behind beyond them themselves, right? If you are, amazing. Then it's totally a good reason to keep the school on your list. And it's not even necessarily a reason to take the school off your list. It's just worth sort of factoring that in as a risk factor, right? You want to factor it in, alongside the upside of, what you think an emerging new program might be able to do, right? Just like that raw talent that Julio is looking for, I do think there's a lot of exciting upside in the unknown in terms of the ambition of what could be built, especially when something is new. But obviously then there's more downside in that if you don't have everything pre-established in terms of like a reputation, right? With emerging programs, you, the student, you are creating and spearheading that reputation. You're creating what it's going to be, which I think can be incredibly exciting to some students, right? Rather than riding the wave of reputation of what previous students have done, you're blazing that trail and you're saying, this is what a Texas women's university student is going to be on Broadway. And this is what our reputation is going to be. It's, being branded based on me, right? But some do realize, hey, I kind of like having that wave behind me as well in terms of alumni network and in terms of people already kind of knowing what it means to be a student graduating from that school. All right, that's it. Another episode of Mapping the College Audition. As we bring 2025 nearer to a close, my God, I can't believe that it's true. This episode was produced by Meghan Cordier and Kelly Prendergast with social media work by Jordan Rice. You can check out Jordan's amazing work at Mapping the College Audition on Instagram, and you can like and subscribe to this very podcast wherever you consume it via audio or video form. That could be Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, go nuts, whatever you like. If you leave us a nice review on the episode, it will give my heart a little tingle of holiday cheer. Hanukkah's coming up soon. Leave me a nice Hanukkah review, why don't you, right? And you can check us out at MTCA.com, the place for all holiday cheer for all of your individual college prep help. To my young artists out there mapping their journeys, please trust that you're enough for the right program exactly as you are right now, on whatever scale of rawness that may be. And now keep striving. We'll catch you next week.